Well, hi everyone, and welcome to ArtsFest Online and to our next HoPIN webinar. Presentations will be from Francesca Strabino from De Montfort University and Rachel Cross from Cardiff University. The event will be chaired by Dr. John Hinks, Honorary Reader at the Centre for Printing History and Culture in Birmingham. If you have any questions for our speakers, please use the Q&A box and we'll go through them at the end of each presentation. We are recording the session, so please, we do ask to not share any sensitive or confidential information. So with all that said, welcome everyone, and over to you, John.
Thank you very much, Claire, and welcome to everyone, and welcome to our two speakers who are new to us. I haven't had either of them on before, I don't think. We've now had 2 years of HoPIN, by the way. October 2020 we started. So yeah, we begin with Rachel Cross, who is, excuse me, is at Cardiff University and is researching Victorian illustrated songs at the intersections between illustration, text and music, which she says reveals new insight into key Victorian issues, which she's going to tell us some more about. So over to Rachel.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, brilliant. Okay, thank you very much for having me here. I'm looking forward to introducing you, hopefully, to the fascinating world of the Victorian illustrated song. So my aim today is to briefly overview their development in the 19th century and then to focus on a particular song and to show you, excuse me, why I find them so interesting. The Victorian illustrated song is almost unique in combining image, music and text within one publication. As such, they provide a distinctive tripartite cultural indicator of Victorian life and ideologies. Illustrated songs permeated Victorian print culture from early in Victoria's reign. Not only were they produced as standalone publications, but they also appeared in numerous newspapers and periodicals, like this one, printed in the Illustrated London News in 1857. My research, however, focuses on those songs that were issued as independent publications, and you can see some covers of such songs here. Available principally from music instrument retailers, these songs were exclusively aimed at those who wanted to perform the songs at home. Covering a wide range of subjects, the songs dealt with issues surrounding everyday life, often in a comic way. The little music that was part of most evening entertainments for the middle class frequently featured these songs, and the sheer numbers produced suggests that illustrated songs often reflected cultural feeling. The morphology of the illustrated song borrowed heavily from the broadside ballad. Containing the lyrics to one or two songs, and often a woodcut or engraved illustration, broadside ballads did not include musical notation and therefore required no formal musical education or instrument. Illustrated songs, on the other hand, included music often arranged for piano and voice. This meant that they were largely aimed at the musically educated bourgeoisie. Many of the illustrations of illustrated songs were also specially commissioned, unlike the illustrations of broadside ballads, which were often reused. Illustrated songs therefore had a distinctive form where the subject matter was presented through three art forms in close juxtaposition. The image was displayed on the cover, whilst the music and the lyrics were presented within. Even though I've principally shown you covers of these songs thus far, my work views the songs holistically. The synthesis of these three art forms offers extensive opportunity for analysis, and it's important not to judge on cover alone. This hanky-panky polka is nowhere near as interesting as the cover might suggest, for example. A little now about the development of the Victorian illustrated song. Cheaper print music has been called one of the great Victorian innovations, and indeed the development of printing methods increased the quality and efficiency of music production. Whereas previously music was hand copied or pricked, one manuscript at a time being laboriously copied out from a master school, 19th century mass production meant sheet music copies could be produced and bought cheaply. Lithography meant even quicker production. Engraved or punched plates of music and words were transferred onto the lithographic stone or plate, meaning many more copies could be taken with very little extra work or cost. Michael Twyman notes that the birth of lithography in the early years of the 19th century coincided almost exactly with the beginning of Beethoven's greatest compositional period and the consequent shift in musical ideas. In a similar way, developments in lithography later in the century led to a marked shift in the consumption of music. A different style of song developed that was cheaply and attractively printed and suitable for amateur musicians to perform at home. Lithography was also significant in the production of the cover illustrations, making the production of imagery more efficient. The number of impressions that could be taken from one pen and ink drawing on stone might have been as large as 30,000. As the artist drew the image directly on the stone, it was also more true to the artist's vision than illustrations reproduced by either engravings or woodcuts, which are often not engraved by the artist. The Victorian illustrated song took several different formats through the 19th century. Early versions in the 1840s had framed half-page illustrations with the music beneath, like this one. Popular between the mid-40s and 1889, Charles Sheard's musical bouquet series of over 9,000 items containing different types of music was published in this format. It contained different types of songs, including dances, anti-slavery songs, and music hall songs, which it carried, as historian Dave Russell states, into parlours, public bars, and church halls all over the country. Later publications of single songs often had unframed, full-page illustrations on the title page, like this one, which we will look at in more detail shortly. The title page served as a cover to help market the song and included the title, name of the composer, lyricist, and lithographer and publisher, and often details of the singer who had made the song famous. The introduction of colour to the illustrations added more interest to the covers. Using chromolithography and other forms of colour lithography, including onlays, later song covers were often striking in their colourful depictions. By the 1890s, cover illustrations became more complex. It also became common to include some of the lyrics on the cover, as well as roundels and vignettes, giving a fuller picture of the song's meaning. As you can see here, lyrics are quite small on that one. We will briefly consider a specific song to show how viewing it in its entirety can reveal new perspectives on Victorian ideas. So this song, we've already had a look at. We're going to look at now the lyrics first. Called A Very Fine Girl for Her Age, it was written in around 1860. By lyricist W.W. Thornton, the lyrics of the first verse established the singer as a post office clerk, a member of the growing lower middle class. Once I went courting a charming girl, although but a post office clerk, I rightly considered myself of some stamp, as daily I stuck to my work. Her name, let me tell, it was Clarabelle. She could sing like a bird in a cage, and though but 18, a promising belle, and a very fine girl of her age. The wordplay on lexis connected to his job also humorously emphasises the modest nature of his station and implies that the girl that he likes, Clarabelle, is of higher social standing. The chorus highlights her uniqueness in outlining the reactions of those she meets in the park. And really she was, of that I am pos, wherever she went, quite the rage. As she went through the park, the folks would remark, what a very fine girl of her age. She is remarked as a very fine girl of her age, implying she is both extraordinary for her age and the period in which she is living. As the chorus appears 4 times after the first 4 verses, it perhaps signifies the importance to the singer of what others thought of her. Yet, seemingly, the singer prizes her for her rare talents rather than her beauty, and it is these that impress him enough to prompt him to propose in the second verse. She could speak French, Latin, Italian, and Greek, as the sages of old was as wise. So I thought, if I'd only a grain of good sense, such accomplishments rare I should prize. So one day I suddenly fell on my knees, her hand and her heart to engage, and made love in the park amongst the green trees to this very fine girl of her age. Certainly such a classical education would have been unusual, although the first steps were taken towards the admission of women into university in the 1860s when this was published. A female scholar of Latin and Greek would have been uncommon. It appears that his prizing of her rare talents is not genuine, however. His sudden decision seems to be because he feels he should acknowledge such talents rather than actually valuing them. Perhaps it is the attention she receives in the park that is the initiator for his apparent passion. Indeed, the third verse reveals his concerns about her practical skills. I afterwards thought 'twould be well to find out if she e'er read a cookery book. Could she cook steak or chop was the question I'd pop, before her to my bosom I took. For some women don't know as through this world they go, the difference twixt onions and sage, and a man wants for life an industrious wife in this commonplace practical age. Deriding women with no culinary skills, he desires an industrious wife, exposing that these are the talents he really values in a woman. Broaching the subject leads to an altercation where Claribel feels understandably somewhat insulted in verse 4. So one day I said to her, my dear Claribel, of the drawing room you are the queen. In the kitchen, pray tell, do you reign there as well? She said, sir, to insult me you mean. Then said I, Claribel, I much fear you're a cell. When she flew in a terrible rage, fainted off in a chair which broke down, I declare. She was such a strong girl of her age. The accusation that she is a cell, or something that utterly disappoints high expectations, sends her into a terrible rage, which apparently leads to syncope. In satirising the fainting heroine of contemporary romantic novels, the lyrics also expose Claribel as displaying apparently male characteristics. During this classically feminine affliction, she humorously breaks a chair, apparently revealing some latent masculinity in her strength. Tellingly, the final line no longer describes her as fine, she is now a strong girl of her age. The final verse tells of the singer's forceful excommunication and subsequent marriage to a sensible wife who is sweet. Her mother, who'd listened outside, then rushed in and called me a deceiver and cheat. Her tall, lanky brother seized me by the throat. They both pitched me into the street. But I soon found a sensible wife, let me state, as sweet as a plum or green gauge. We've children, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all such very fine girls of their age. The lyrics therefore end positively for the male singer. In escaping marriage to the clever but fiery Claribel, he succeeds in securing his angel in the house. Claribel is revealed as unsuitable as wife material due to her lack of domestic skills and ability to openly express her anger, although perhaps we feel that she had a lucky escape. The final modified chorus communicates his resolution to bring up his own daughters not to be too fine for this practical age. And really they are, though I'm their papa, wherever they go, quite the rage. And let me remark to each bachelor spark, not too fine for this practical age. So turning to the illustration now, we can see that it captures the drama of the final verse's lyrics. For those who did not know the song, the illustration would act as a teaser. The purchaser would want to find out what story was behind such a dramatic scene. The choice of the moment illustrated here is clever. It signified the song as comic, being a reminder of the energy of the musical stage, and it also piqued the interest of buyers. By the famous song cover lithographer Alfred Concannon, the illustration is alive with action and feeling. Concannon adds details to augment the humour. The doormat visibly reads exit rather than welcome, and the wall barometer amusingly predicts the forecast of very stormy. The barking dog adds to the energy of the scene, suggesting noise and chaos. Yet, although the illustration largely correlates with the lyrics, its focus is different. Whereas the words of the song focus on Claribel and her relationship with the singer, the illustration spotlights the relationship between him and her family, and Claribel is relegated to the background. Indeed, she is prostrate, not pictured in the park as described in the chorus. Neither are the books in the background to show Claribel's great learning. The only evidence of her great, terrible rage is the resultant faint. Many song cover illustrations depict women as passive or without potential for movement, just as Richard Leppert notes was the case in 18th century portraiture of women. Even the irate mother merely wags her finger here, red-faced, while the son forcibly ejects the singer. Yet the illustration's messages are complex. Although the figure of the mother seems to correlate with the lyrics depiction of a harridan, for example, Concannon's inclusion of her feet and frilly petticoat also suggests vulnerability and femininity. The stereotypical mother-in-law figure of the lyrics is therefore given more depth by Concannon's interpretation. Hinting at her vulnerability in this way is emotive and suggests that she is in some way helpless. Whilst this corresponds with dominant beliefs about gender on the one hand, on the other it evokes some sympathy for her, an emotion that the lyrics do not educe. The illustration therefore has some elements that are, to use Peter Wagner's term, excessive to the text. Its focus on the male interaction and its depiction of the two females augment the lyrics' presentation of the characters. Yet, in this tripartite publication, it is not only the illustration that can be excessive to the text. The music also has some of its own messages. Written by the singer who also performed it, Fred French, the Jolly A major tune is in 6/8 timing, giving it a dance-like feel. The opening introduction is rather unusually decorated with trills and acciacaturas, which are grace notes, perhaps symbolising Claribel herself as rather lavish. The trills could also be a reference to Claribel's ability to sing like a bird in a cage. In the verse, the split chord diatonic accompaniment, which is like this, supports the simple repeated melody of the verse. Repeating the melody in this way made the song more memorable and therefore catchy. There is some effective word painting where the musical techniques highlight certain words, despite the strophic nature of the song. Where the singer introduces her and extols her singing in the first verse, for example, the accompaniment changes to gentle broken chords, suggesting a classical song accompaniment. And this may be to highlight her musical talent. The description, though, of his sensible wife as sweet as plum or greengage in the final verse is also highlighted by this accompaniment. So such similar treatment works to further stress the difference between the women. Yet the music also suggests that Claribel is not as outstanding as the lyrics maintain. Her name is introduced on a weak beat. Introducing her this way makes her seem unimportant, despite the lyrics stressing her distinctiveness. The satisfying sequence highlights the significant words of each verse's first and third lines. This sequence. Offering variety at the same time as familiarity to the listener, sequence has been used extensively in song. Think of the descending sequence on the fa la la of Deck the Halls, for example, and also more recently in the verse of What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong on Red Roses 2, For Me and You. Treating words with this musical technique makes them stand out. The sequence therefore highlights the verse ones, I rightly considered myself of some stamp, showing his self-confidence and implying perhaps he really is too good for Clarabel rather than the other way around. In verse 2, the sequence emphasises his objective approach to the proposal, where he deems it would make good sense to prize such accomplishments. The important question in verse 3, could she cook, steak or chop, was a question I'd pop, as well as verse 4's, in the kitchen, pray tell, do you reign there as well, are similarly stressed with the sequence. Perhaps its most significant application is in its setting of the words, her tall lanky brother seized me by the throat, in the final verse, as it highlights the violent result of his overt self-confidence and misguided questioning, perhaps to induce a feeling of sympathy in the listener. Looking at the music of all the verses, therefore, we can see that the sequences bring out a specific side to the singer's story. In stressing these particular lyrics, the music emphasises the singer's rationality, drawing attention to the reaction of Clarabel's family as unreasonable. Rather than underpinning the idea of Clarabel as outstanding and special as the lyrics initially express, both the illustration and the music therefore seem to sideline her in focusing on male perspectives. In adding an excess to the lyrics, the two art forms therefore offer perhaps more insight into Victorian ideas surrounding gender. To sum up then, as musicologist John Finson has asserted, the lyrics and music of popular song are documents of a broader history. Yet I argue that the addition of illustration to the lyrics and music offers opportunity to appreciate an even broader history of Victorian culture. Examining all three art forms of illustrated songs often unearths apparent contradictions in representations. However, this does not mean that depictions are any less powerful for such contradiction. Indeed, whilst each art form's depiction can be powerful in its own right, when examined in the context of other art forms, portrayals become an even deeper representation of history. Looking at the song holistically presents women that go beyond the types of the lyrics. The illustration suggests more vulnerability in both the women than either the music or the lyrics signify, for example. Similarly, the music highlights the apparent rationality of the male, which correlates with the lyrics, but not the illustration, which focuses on the irrational behaviour of both males. These inconsistencies suggest more keenly the depth of Victorian concern about gender roles and ideas of so-called masculinity and femininity. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Rachel. That was fascinating. Really enjoyed that. I think it's also the first time we've had somebody playing some music live for us on a HoPIN seminar. So thank you for that. Right, questions. We're going to take questions for Rachel now, and then we'll take questions on Francesca's after her talk. So questions for Rachel, please. I've got one already. Put them in the Q&A box, please, and then I'll read them out. Question from David Solo. Great talk and performance. I was wondering if there were any photographically illustrated songs.
Yes, there are. And a little bit later than this, a lot of them, and particularly just post my era, so sort of Edwardian time, there's a lot of photographs, especially American songs, actually. A lot of them, the singers, pictures of the singers.
Ah, yes. Yeah, good. Thank you. All right. More questions, please. Here's another one from Pauline. Thank you, Rachel. Could you please expand on what you mean by almost unique? For example, where did Victorian nursery rhymes and songs fit into your definition?
Thank you. Yes, so I'm saying almost unique in that there are other things that have got illustrations, but I think it was more that these were specially commissioned often for this, you know. So I don't know how many nursery rhymes had the musical notation in as well. I'm not sure, but these are generally sort of just published as single publications with the 3 in. That's sort of what I was going for with the unique, almost unique phrase. I don't know if that's answered your question.
Question from Sharon Wells. Would making the front page illustration rather sensationalist increased sales?
I think so, yes. Yeah, particularly with comic songs. So this was a musical song, and a lot of them were musical songs. And I think the more comic they were, the more it sort of lent itself to drama.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. There's also a parallel with book publishing at that period, isn't there, where you get the sort of sensationalist, particularly the yellow backs and that sort of type of publication. Making it yes, and that carries on into the 20th century, certainly, where you get sensationalist covers on paper, quite lurid pictures, usually of partially naked women having various things done to them, like being kidnapped, etc. Yes. Not that I would read something like that, but I've seen them on bookstores. Maybe not so much recently. I think people are a bit more sensitive now. Question from David Atkinson. When you say cheap, what did they cost? And is there a way of measuring how cheap that was and at what level of society?
Yeah, so this one, I think, was they're about 4 shillings. The brightly coloured ones were about 4 shillings, but you could get them at the sort of mid, this is sort of 1860s. But to be quite honest, they didn't really rise, the price didn't go up that much. So in the 1890s, you still had them at about 4 shillings. But you could get them for cheaper if they were black and white. There's a great one that I've been looking at. It's hilarious. It's a very funny one, and that was only 2 shillings and 6, so it was that was a cheap one, and that was in the 18s. So that was 1870s. So you could get them cheaper, but 4 shillings seems to be the going rate for the colour ones.
Are they usually dated? Can you work out the date?
Not always.
Not always.
No. So I rely on the experts at the Bodleian. But not from their collections, they know when. But I don't not some of them have got dates on for the publishing data.
Okay, another one here, question from Jacqueline Reed Walsh. Sorry I came late. Were the songs linked to a certain musical performance?
Yeah, generally they were, and actually this one doesn't have the picture on, but it would have the singer's portrait on the front, and often somebody asked about photos. It was often done from a photo in this time, so, and then it was photos themselves. But yeah, they would be tied to a specific act generally, and it would be the singer, and the singer's name would be in big writing. Haven't got it on this one, but it would be, yes, definitely tied to some particular act.
Some of the earlier examples you showed have got singers' names.
Yes, yeah, they have. Yeah.
Right. If there are any more questions, please put them in the Q&A. I've got one myself in the meantime. I think you mentioned, when you're talking about chromolithography, you mentioned and other methods. Do you know what other methods were?
No, do you know, I was going to ask that myself.
Oh, right.
Because I knew that you guys are all experts. But yeah, I think this is from, I think, Michael Twyman, when I went to see him, and I know that chromolithography is different to some other, but I think it's something to do with the onlays. But I also wanted to ask that. So if there's anybody there who's who knows?
Michael is the expert on that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do we have any more? We don't. I think you're off the hook. So thanks again, Rachel, for that extremely interesting talk. And thank you to those who asked questions. There aren't any more coming up, so I'm going to wind things up, and I'm going to hand back in a second to Claire. Can I just say, if you want to join, if you haven't joined HoPIN already, it's free, and you just need to email me, john.hinks, Hinks, at BCU-AC-UK. The next HoPIN event is the 17th of November. It's a special event about Buick. So if you're interested in Buick engravings, put the date in your diary now. If you're signed up to HoPIN, you will get details of that shortly, well, in the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, a couple of weeks maybe. Thank you again to University of Wolverhampton, Claire and Laura, for looking after us. As always, we very much appreciate your help, and I'll hand you back now to Claire just to wind things up.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I mean, without wanting to sort of repeat what you said, I just want to thank Francesca and Rachel for their wonderful presentations. And of course to you, John, as always, for chairing the session. As John says, we'll see you on the 17th of November, all being well. Details will be released soon. And as always, you can book for free through Eventbrite. So have a good evening. Hope to see you there. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Thank you.